Okay, it is now 6:00 p.m. It's September 10th, 2019, and I'd like to welcome you to the workshop. I always call this the State of the District meeting, where our superintendent and different employees give us an update on the past year of what they think we've accomplished, and also they talk about what they'd like to see in the future. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the general session, and I'd like to notify you that we are in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act, and that we have notified the media of the date, time, and place of this meeting. I would also like to notify you that we tape this meeting for accuracy in the minutes, and that we are in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. And I'm going to turn it over to Miss Anne Marie Green and ask for her to give us an invocation, please.
Please. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the start to a great school year. We look forward to all that is going to be accomplished this year through our staff and teachers to empower each child in our district to design the future. Guide us as we make decisions and set a course for the year ahead. At this time, we lift up the citizens of the Bahamas during this time of loss and devastation, and we just pray that assistance and support will be coming their way to help them restore their way of life. Thank you for this evening and for the beautiful day that we've had, and bless our words and actions that they may honor you. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Board, in front of you, you have an agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any questions or comments regarding the agenda, Board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and it is unanimous. At this time, 3.0, we're going to do an overview of the strategic plan, and I'm going to call on Dr. Little to kick us off. Thank you, Dr. Little.
Chair, in front of you, you have a one-pager that captures our vision, our mission, and our system commitments. And throughout this last year, we have taken pieces of the strategic plan and presented them to you during our board meetings. And tonight, what we would like to do is we would like to give you a comprehensive overview of the district's efforts on the strategic plan and how this has moved forward over the 18-19 school year, and also how you can see it moving forward the 19-20 school year as well. Our strategic plan, the purpose of our strategic plan, we wanted to do it a little differently. We wanted it to be flexible. We want it to be adaptable. Instead of being a list of things to do, sometimes a strategic plan can become a to-do list, and you're just trying to check off the one thing after the next, one thing after the next. We wanted our strategic plan instead of being that, we really wanted our strategic plan to represent our beliefs about children. So one of the things that we have done differently in our strategic plan is, instead of a 5-year strategic plan, as you know, we've done a 3-year strategic plan. A couple of reasons why that helps us. Number one, when you think about a 5-year strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan is really more of an antiquated way of looking at things. The rate of change, what we see today as opposed to 25 or 30 years ago, where we think about 5 years from now, really the rate of change makes year 4 or year 5 of a strategic plan really not very valuable in terms of planning. In addition to that, a 3-year strategic plan creates a greater sense of urgency. We're really looking to change the outcomes for our students. And if you think about a 5-year strategic plan, sometimes it's easy to hide in, well, we can deal with that 4 years from now or 5 years from now, but that's not good enough for us. We want to make those outcome changes for kids today because we are serving children today. But it also provides us, this strategic plan also provides us with a sounding board. It's a sounding board of the work that we are going to be committed to. It's the work that we will take on, and it's also the work that we are not going to take on. It helps keep us focused on high leverage strategies instead of being distracted by less effective strategies. And despite our growth and our challenges, it has already provided clarity about how we are going to move the district forward, And that clarity is really evidenced when I go places and I hear people talking about our vision. I hear people talking about our mission. How schools, when I talk to principals and they reference system commitments, those are ways that we know that there's a tangible work to what we're doing. Now this year, we have pulled this language from the strategic plan that we think is incredibly important. And this language is scattered already throughout the plan. If you look at our vision statement from earlier, each child. You look at our mission statement, it talks about all learners. In the first system commitment, it says all children, all students, regardless of circumstances. This language is already in our strategic plan, and we really wanted to pull it out and highlight it as a constant reminder of the work that's before us. Now, tonight is going to be a little different than how we've done this workshop in the past. I know that's a surprise. But in this particular case, because our strategic plan because we've done it differently than what we've done in the past, tonight's going to look a little different as well. So, for example, when we look at the priorities for 1920, they're going to be folded into the conversation because our strategic plan is about looking at the strategies that we're going to examine tonight and talk about how those strategies then evolve over the next year. And we're going to look at strategies in 3 basic categories as part of that exploration tonight. First, the key strategies we'll talk about are strategies in implementation. These were the strategies that this year that were fully implemented and fully realized. Now, those are going to change because as we learn about those strategies, as we learn those lessons, what does it look like for 1920? We're going to have that conversation tonight as well. Second, we're going to take a look at the strategies in design. So these were strategies that we did a lot of thoughtfulness and planning in, but that implementation varied from school to school depending on school readiness. Some schools were very eager to jump into those strategies and ready to go. Other schools are still in the planning stages of those strategies and are waiting. And so those are our in-design strategies. And the final group of strategies is our strategies in exploration. Now, these are strategies that we really think align with our strategic plan. We feel very comfortable with the strategies, but they are still very much in development. And those may stay in development this year as we continue to explore them and do they meet our needs. And so they're moving into that chamber of are we meeting our needs? And as we hold it up to our strategic plan, are these strategies impactful enough to move forward? And so that's the 3 things that we're going to look at tonight. So I want to direct your attention to a second piece of paper that you have before you. This is going to be your note catcher. In just a few minutes, we are going to go over these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strategies that you're going to have some mini presentations on. And then so you have an opportunity to put status updates, next steps, those types of strategies. And then at the end, don't do anything yet under our reflection, but we'll also have a reflection time for you to work on this once we're done with all of this part of the presentation. Okay, are there any questions before we proceed? All right, if not, I'd like to have Dr. Shane Phillips come up and he's going to talk to us about strategic support teams. No, I'm just standing here.
Do what? Hello? Oh, okay. Madam Chair, members of the board, it's my pleasure to talk to you tonight about our first strategy, which are the strategic school support team meetings. So we began this project or this process last year based on some things that we learned from a visit to another state, and we kind of made it our own a little bit at first, where with the goal being having a presence in schools to learn more about what's going on at individual schools from the central services standpoint to learn and to get a better feel about what those schools needed from us in order to accomplish their goals. So last year, it was a very observational role by central services staff. We basically provided an agenda to the schools and observed a meeting in progress, and then met with the team afterwards to provide feedback and offer some support. So we conducted those meetings last year, 72 of those meetings. Every school got 2 meetings, one in the fall and one in the spring, and then we had some schools that got 3, one with an additional one in the winter. Those were some of our schools that were in greatest need of support based on performance, and schools that had new principals that we felt like needed some additional support. So the benefits of that from last year were, of course, we had a greater presence in the school, and we became more informed about those practices and needs with regard to the strategic plan. There were some challenges, though. So those teams were primarily constructed of instructional services personnel. So there were often times when the schools would present needs that needed to be addressed by HR or operations or student services. And it was instruction folks around the table, so it became a little bit difficult and problematic to get that communication about those needs to the right people. So we were able to sit down this summer, and late last year and over the summer, we got feedback from people at Central Services, principals, and what we learned was that in general, principals like this concept of us being in the schools and learning about their needs, but they didn't necessarily like the procedures that we used last year, the format. So we revamped that whole process based on that feedback and made some changes. So first thing we did was we made it more participatory by Central Services. So we're actually participating in those meetings. They have a choice of 3 agendas instead of the one set one. So they can choose to do a learning walk, a data analysis protocol, or a student services protocol, all of which are based on a continuous improvement sort of model, because we know that while we have schools that are very, very high performing, every one of our schools can get better in some way. And Dr. Smith has worked very hard with these schools to construct a work plan that focuses around 1 or 2 goals from the strategic plan for that school. And then they've been encouraged to work these meeting agendas around those work plans so that everything kind of aligns up the chain. Then sir, did somebody say something? Oh, I'm hearing things. We also have created teams that have members on those teams from every division at Central Services. So every team has representation from operations, from fiscal services, from HR, which gives a more cross-sectional view for those folks to see what's going on in the schools. And then we have a defined communication plan, which goes where the facilitators for each of these teams will report to our strategy and action team, and that will come all the way up to SLT, and so that we can take action on the things that we're seeing in the schools. Our next steps, we have already started meetings for this year. Based on the ones I've been in, I've seen some really positive changes and some positive responses to the new format. So we have already begun those. We'll continue to do those meetings. And our team facilitators, again, will provide regular updates to the strategy and action team and communicate those to SLT for action. So I'm going to hand it off to Erica Bissell, and she's going to continue.
It's not going to make that noise again, is it? It might. Good evening. Miss Hillary Morgan is passing out a folder that has 2 documents that we will have projected, but it's going to be a lot easier for you to read and see the details of the documents by having hard copies. And so while she's doing that, let me go forward here. The key strategy that Ms. Morgan and I are going to talk about tonight is the instructional model for literacy and mathematics. And several of the slides that we're going to share tonight are slides that we've actually shared in previous updates, but we wanted to revisit them to give you update on how they are being implemented in our schools and the results that we're seeing, and also our next steps related to those actions. So to begin, this is a visible representation of our instructional model, and the pie represents a chunk of time. And so this isn't actually 90 minutes or 120 minutes or 45 minutes. It's whatever amount of time a teacher has. We expect that it is divided accordingly to the cutouts of this pie. And what you'll notice is that the opening and the sharing and reflection, which are both very important, but they are kind of the bookends to the experience that students have in a classroom. The mini lesson, which you're going to hear a little bit more about, is where it's teacher-directed time, but the bulk of the time is work time, and that's where students are putting into practice the skills and strategies that they've been taught during the mini lesson or focus lesson, either that day or on previous days. And so it's really important that we acknowledge that in order for students to get better at anything, and we can relate this to riding a bike, and you'll see a sports analogy on one of the pages that we shared, is they have to have that authentic practice and lots of time to practice with coaching alongside. And so the teacher during this work time is not just sitting and doing, whatever she feels or he feels. They are coaching the student in different structures like conferring or pulling in children in small groups in order to coach them based on what they need as a learner. Okay? And we would call this a terminology that you may hear as a gradual release of responsibility, in that the teacher starts with being the model of the person who kind of is the expert in an area, and we release that responsibility as we travel throughout this instructional model for students then to take on the ownership and be self-directed in their learning.
Okay, to speak more specifically to math, we kind of had 3 variations of the workshop model, and I'll focus on the middle structure, and that starts with, all of our classes starts with the number sense routine. It's an accessible task where all students are successful and invited into the learning. Then we move to a focus lesson, which is whole group instruction around new learning for the entire class. Then we move into guided math and learning stations. And the guided math is a differentiated math instruction in small group. And the learning stations can be independent or collaborative, and they're purposeful activities that allow kids opportunities to engage in the mathematics. And then we close with a sharing and reflection. The structure to the right is very similar, just minus the focus lesson. And then the one on the left is kind of a unique structure. We call it a task and share structure. It still starts with an opening, but then the teacher launches into a math task where the students work collaboratively. And while the students are working, the teacher's walking around facilitating, eliciting student thinking, nudging the thinking forward using questioning techniques, and also making note of the strategies the kids are using. And so when you get to the student share time, it's a pretty nice amount of time, 15 minutes, but it's a very intentionally sequenced share. The teacher may choose to share strategies from the most common strategy she saw to the most novel approach, or the teacher may choose to share the strategy from the most concrete approach to the most abstract. But again, a very intentional sequence to also help build understanding during that time. And again, we close with a reflection.
Thank you. So similarly, in reading and writing workshop, we have very common structures to math, which is really refreshing for our elementary folks who often teach multiple subjects. They can see the connections between the instructional model, though the content is different. And it also allows for a lot of collaboration at the secondary level, where our teachers are really content specific, but then again, they have a commonality in the way they approach their instruction, even though their content may be math driven or English language arts driven. But similarly to what Ms. Morgan shared, we start with an opening in reading and writing workshop, and that opening is a teacher welcoming the students, inviting them in as learners, might unpack a learning target, explain to them what they're going to learn today or what they're going to show mastery of today, depending. They don't always get to mastery within one class period. And then in the mini lesson, this is the teacher-directed part. We call it the teacher time. This is where I, as teacher, am going to show you a skill or strategy that you can then apply when you go to do your independent reading or writing. That's, again, a very small chunk when considering the time or the amount of time that a teacher has with a group of students. And then the work time, this is when you're going to see students putting pencil to paper. You're going to have students with their eyes on text, and you're going to see the teacher going around and strategically meeting with students, either in small group or one-on-one conferring, or maybe sometimes in partnerships, and giving the direct very specific intentional feedback that each student in the class needs as a reader, to develop as a reader or a writer. And then in the share, we call this a teaching share. And again, similarly to math, this is where the teacher may lift up something he or she saw that she wants others to take note of. It may be a time to say, as you think forward to what we're going to do tomorrow, I want you to consider this. So the share can take a lot of different forms, but just as important as mini lesson and work time, that opening and share, kind of open and close that lesson so students see the beginning and end, at least of that class period. Again, it doesn't mean that mastery and proficiency all comes in that one amount of time, but they can see that there was a logical sequence of events. And then on this sheet, you'll also see just some reasons why we promote this structure, that even though they may be stating in name, reading and writing, why we promote a workshop, they're applicable across the disciplines, in that a workshop model allows, again, for that students to be putting into practice the things that their teacher is teaching them explicitly.
All right, and so one of our professional learning opportunities for teachers are our model classrooms. Our model classrooms are rooms where teachers can visit and see visible implementation of our instructional model. These rooms serve continual learning for both our model classroom teacher as well as the visiting teachers. Our process for visiting these classrooms involves a pre-observation conference and a post-observation conference between the teacher and the coach or administrator that is who will be accompanying the teacher to the visit. And not only do the visiting team, they get to see the teacher in action, they also have the opportunity to debrief after the lesson, which is a very powerful piece to that visit. And I wanted to share with you, last week I had received an email from a coach, and this is from a teacher that she took to see a model classroom just last week. The teacher said, "Thank you for taking us. I honestly learned so much from Meredith today. I was so inspired that I went ahead and jumped into it today. It was a little rocky just because it is new to them, but overall, I was so pleased with my math block today." So this kind of illustrates the power of a model classroom visit in a short amount of time, and it inspired that teacher to have the courage to take the risk and jump right in for our kids.
And similarly, we shared this with you at a board update, but this is our approach to the show, don't tell professional learning concept. And so model classrooms is one way that we're doing that, and lab sites is another. And lab sites are more, we explained it as kind of that teaching hospital feel, where teachers are alongside an expert with a group of students or with a class of students, and they watch the expert model a particular strategy, and then they right then and there try it and are coached by the expert or the consultant or the expert or the coach to help them move their practice forward. And similarly to what Ms. Morgan shared, the feedback on lab sites reflect that teachers go to a lab site or experience a lab site and implement a change in their classroom right away. We don't see that kind of transfer and that kind of a change in practice with traditional professional learning, or we haven't in the past. It takes much longer for transfer to take place when it's more of the telling type of professional learning, and so we're getting really great results from both model classrooms and lab sites. And so our next steps are to continue the show, don't tell professional learning, and to really focus on making sure teachers are engaged in their learning and not just passive bystanders in the learning, but also that we do it in real time with real kids. Because again, the messiness comes when you actually have 25 little folks with you, and you have to know how to be responsive and do responsive teaching and not be reactive and not you can't simulate that kind of experience. And so it's really helpful, and I think you've heard or we shared with parent ambassadors that the model classroom teachers and the lab site facilitators all say that kids are benefiting because they actually have like 3 and 4 teachers at one time in the classroom where they're getting coached, even though if you're a teacher at heart, you can't help but see a child striving to read and help them with a strategy or a skill. So it has so many benefits. They're kind of too many to explain in one setting. We want to add additional model classrooms and develop a consistent role description and selection criteria. So Ms. Morgan and I kind of went about this in a very novice way, and we want to make our system a little bit more sophisticated in how we're discovering and supporting model classroom teachers and spreading the opportunity out to all of our schools and all of our teachers if they so desire to develop in that teacher leadership capacity. We want to increase our number of lab site experiences and include a variety of grade levels and content areas. And then we want to continue to hone our coaching model with our school-based coaches using coaching cycles, which is an intensive coaching opportunity for teachers. Again, a third opportunity that we've shared here for them to hone their craft. Now we'll turn over to Dr. Gillespie and Dr. Balo.
Yeah, got too many things here. I don't know if I can operate both. Yeah, okay. Good evening. Student support services include special education, response to intervention, and English for speakers of other languages. We sometimes call that ESOL. Historically, instruction provided by these programs have been through pull-out services, meaning students leave the general classroom and go to a separate classroom, and they are moving away from content instruction, away from their friends and peers, and away from instruction that will perhaps help them become college and career ready. Well, one size does not fit all, so many students with special learning needs can benefit from specialized support and instruction that can be delivered through a push-in model as opposed to a pull-out model. Now, the work time in the workshop model that we just learned about allows for integration of individual and small group support inside the general classroom during instruction. And that's provided by special program teachers, interventionists, and therapists. So last year, we began this journey all together. Now, for special education last year, we had some schools at all levels, from preschool up to high school, that were piloting some co-teaching, which is one of the 6 models of push-in services. In May, we kind of let everyone know that we were starting this journey united, and with that, we encouraged the special educators to start talking with the math and literacy coaches in the building for, get this, special education to learn a new language. You know, we're known for our acronyms. Well, we needed to learn the language of the general classroom and all those things that are going on with the workshop model. So we said, we're going to do this.
And for intervention, last year we focused on, it was a little different elementary to middle. In elementary, we really asked folks to start thinking about opportunities, look for places to push in, and begin. And it took off in different ways depending on the school. Some realized that the students were soaring. They loved being in their classroom environment. They enjoyed having the teacher come in. Teachers were having positive results, and so it expanded very quickly. And then in some schools, they really decided, depending on the intervention tier, to just stick with the tier 2 for push-in, and it was a little more controlled. So we kind of let folks have, depending on their context, a little flexibility in starting. In middle school, however, last year, we did move to a full push-in approach for intervention, and so all middle school students had the opportunity, whereas prior they were losing an encore or an exploratory, like a related arts type class, or even PE, they now were not losing any of those, and all intervention service moved to the classroom. And then in terms of ESOL, they're like we're 1 year behind there. So we began planning for moving to more intentional instructional setting based on the student's ELP, which is their the level of language proficiency that they have. And that was by beginning, I mean, we started talking about it. And then I sent several teachers to specific workshops on co-teaching, and they shared with ESOL teachers on when they returned to just build knowledge. And now we're going to show you where we are this year.
Well, we both had a busy summer, and so we started out with school administrators attending that push-in service, and I believe that was one of the numbers you presented. We had about 97% of all principals and APs attend one of our 7 or 8 offerings of information on the push-in model. And then all special education teachers and interventionists and partner general ed teachers receive some push-in service staff or professional development. So that was to gear us up. So this year, as we move into this school year, more schools are in special education are piloting push-in services or using that co-teaching model for resource and some of our self-contained kids. And we also introduced in August to the special ed staff school district guidelines for co-teaching. It leaves a lot of room for variation for the individual schools, but it gives a structure for those who want to go after what we consider the most involved of the 6 models of push-in.
And you can see what a difference it makes because we have a lot more bullet points there for elementary. So this year in elementary, all elementary schools are providing some piece of intervention in a much more concrete and systematic way through a push-in approach. Last year, it really was based on context, and now I can confidently say everybody has a plan, which is a step in the right direction. Also, I'm thrilled about the second bullet there. We will be 2 weeks away. We're 2 weeks away from opening our first model classroom for RTI to showcase push-in. It's at Gilbert Primary School, and everything you heard from math and literacy about model classroom is the same concept, but it is really to give both interventionists and classroom teachers an opportunity to see this push-in approach in action so that they can immediately go back and start making plans to implement. Middle schools are continuing to provide intervention through push-in, but based on the PD that Dr. Balo mentioned, they are really trying to refine their approach and have a little more structure to what's happening in that setting. And then we also, through all of that, the thing that's interesting is when you take the intervention service to the classroom, you realize very quickly how important it is to align with core curriculum. Intervention lessons and approach has to be similar to what students are doing in the core, or else they aren't going to make that kind of transfer. So we've been talking a lot about that, but we are continuing to really tighten that up and continue getting closer and closer to being connected to core. Also, we are continuing the inclusion of interventionists in all coach provided, and that's a variety based on school literacy coach or instructional coach professional development so that they can continue to align, and also growing that communication between classroom teacher and interventionist. That was another focus of last year that we sort of started. It took off, and it's really, those last 3 bullets are all showcased in the model classroom. In terms of ESOL, all schools this year are encouraged to find a push-in opportunity. So you see, we're right where we were last year with RTI and elementary, and all have. So they all are looking for a pocket to begin trying this blended model. And then also, especially at middle school, we are intentionally scheduling based on that English language proficiency. So for example, a student who is screened and is a lower level English language learner, they are scheduled for an ESOL class, and higher will receive push-in or a shorter period of pull-out. And that is a big difference than what we had prior. So next we'll share our next steps.
We have Stetson and Associates returning. They came to us a couple years ago and sort of laid some groundwork for what we're doing, and that was a big success with multidisciplinary teams from the schools. So they're returning this fall to really work with some of our targeted support schools, specifically Deerfield, Lexington High, and White Knoll High School, and they will be helping with those push-in services. We now are providing what we call special education zone area and program-alike meetings to support with continuous and ongoing support for this inclusive model. And then we want to further inform school administrators, so for the administrators here, it's coming, the information about those guidelines, the district guidelines for co-teaching.
And in terms of response to intervention, you can see we believe in the model classroom. And so the goal this year is to determine sites that we will implement most likely next school year, but could be in second semester this year for that variety. With intervention, the model is so different, and you have to have so many options depending on what a child needs. So we want to make sure we can provide the perfect example of each. With ESOL, we are going to continue with professional development, growing that knowledge base for co-teaching and push-in. And also, I hope that we're able to determine both at all levels, elementary, middle, high, push-in and pull out ESOL model classrooms for other ESOL teachers to go and learn about best practice.
And I'm going to finish with, at Leading as One, we also presented to folks about this move toward an integrated, more inclusive model, and we developed a logo, if you will. So I brought that with me. And it's really what we're trying to do is to use all of the support systems and programs that we have to support the core instruction that students get. And I will have to admit, this has been in my office, and Ann O'Kane walked in, and she said, "Where's 504?" So 504 is part of the general classroom, so they don't have to push in, they're in. So anyway, we said, we got you. So this is what we're trying to achieve. And Ryan, and dual credit? You have to operate both.
Thank you. Good evening. I am excited to be here to talk to you about dual enrollment. As I've listened to my fellow presenters talk, it kind of demonstrates what we had hoped this strategic plan would accomplish, with a lot of overlapping strategies that come together. So you see the school support meetings where you're identifying the specific needs of the schools and the students, and then you work on professional learning approaches and instructional models that meet those students' needs. And then you identify the students that need extra something so you can get in there and do that for the point of progressing students on time for their next step. Over the past 3 years, we have seen that the next step for many of our students is to go ahead and begin college coursework. And we've had some wonderful partners that have come along the journey with us, and we've had really massive expansion of college opportunities for our students. And the best way for a student to start believing that he or she is a college student is to get in there and be successful. And our rates of success in our college credit classes are kind of absurdly high, in upper 99 percentile of students succeeding from the time they enroll in the courses through the completion of those courses, which is remarkable when you consider the numbers and the growth that we've had. So the current status update is we have extended our partnership with the University of South Carolina Sumter, who's been a wonderful partner for us, and they're eager to be a part of our learning community. So they were at 3 high schools last year, while Gilbert and Pelion were partnering with Midlands Tech. This year, Midlands Tech is looking to align their courses and their dual enrollment courses with career and technical pathways so that the students can come and start their journey with Midlands aligned with some of the coursework they're taking at the Technology Center. So we have all 5 high schools partnering for a more general college education experience through the University of South Carolina Sumter, and that's expanded some opportunities for students because USC Sumter works with us on admissions. Now, students still have to meet the admissions criteria of the University of South Carolina, which is a little bit more flexible and uses different measures than Midlands Tech. When we made that expansion, we did not, however, reduce our partnership with Midlands. So what we've done now is Midlands' problem of practice is that they were having empty seats in programs like entrepreneurship and some of the mechatronics and pharmacology. So they came to us and said, how can we continue to promote these programs? So when students go to Lexington Technology Center this spring, they will be taking pharmacology, not for high school credit only, but pharmacology through Midlands Tech for college credit, and aligning that with Midlands Tech English 101. So while they're doing that, they're getting both of those courses. They might be getting an accelerated pathway in welding and taking public speaking through Midlands Tech. So that partnership is looking to grow as well. And it's been a positive experience as we've worked with Midlands to see how they can have a continuous presence at our technology center for students who are likely thinking about going straight into Midlands, probably as sophomores for them. It is, but in the past, it has not been for college credit. It's been for a high school credit, and now it will be for both. And they're doing medical terminology, so it's like MedTerm 101 as well out there, and that's for the same students who are kind of going to progress on to Nephron, perhaps. So we've continued to expand the courses through USC Sumter. So not only are we offering just the basic core courses for the Carolina core, but some different kind of classes. So we offered Spanish for the first time last year, and we've got an additional section of Spanish this year. We're adding Teacher Cadet 2, and we're one of the first districts in the state, and that's educational psychology. So these are folks who are interested enough to where they took Teacher Cadet 1 and got college credit for it, and they're going to go on and take the next course, leading potentially to some really talented, excited teachers coming out ready to get in and even get through college faster and get back to us. We continue to have a really robust relationship with the Hartsville Governor's School for Science and Math with Accelerate, and students, the courses that are expanding in there, they're taking new courses that you approved through local board last month, like biomedical science and aeronautic engineering. It's amazing stuff, and they're getting the college credit for those courses. So the Carolina core is what we're going to see pretty steady across all 5 of our high schools, anchored really around English 101 and 102. So we try to get everybody that's interested in dual enrollment in English 101 and 102, and then we pair those with something else that's going to work for them, like a fine arts or something that they're going to have to take in college. And they're having success in the classes, but more than that, they're developing this college mindset. When they walk through the doors, even at their high school, they feel like a college student. They have a college professor. They have college expectations, and they walk out with credits and kind of a belief that they can do it. We have seen at our big schools that there was some initial worry years ago that if you have dual enrollment, people won't schedule themselves into AP. That has not been true at all, and there hasn't been a reduction in AP. But at Gilbert and Pelion, the smaller schools where they really thought, you know, it's got to be one or the other, that's not been the case. We've seen double digits at Pelion, 36% increase in AP enrollment, while they have one of the biggest offerings of USC Sumter classes in our district. So the college mindset, kids are just signing up for college classes and walking out with credits. So the numbers are pretty impressive. The growth that we've seen, and since, gosh, when we really started this conversation, it was much lower than this. I only went back 3 years, but 357 students, unduplicated students enrolled in college courses in 2017-18. We're now up over 500, and each of those students takes 2 to 4 courses. So when they enroll to qualify for lottery tuition funds, they have to have a matching class. So they always enroll in more than one, and sometimes 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. So they're getting 4 courses in their junior or senior year. So you see the number of courses that students are taking this year is up past 1,500, and the students stand to earn 4,752 credit hours for college. We asked Dr. Phillips in the Accountability Office, what does that equate to in terms of college tuition? And a rough estimate that you're paying $1,500 for a class, we're surpassing $7 million in savings for our families just in tuition. But in addition to that, the likelihood that these folks are going to go on to college because they've already started. They know how to do a FAFSA form. They know how to talk to a professor on their own, because when they're in college courses with us, they follow FERPA. The kids are responsible for communicating with their professors directly, and it's not sort of parents and professors anymore. It is college. So some of our next steps, we don't anticipate that there's going to be going backwards. The demand is there for our kids. So if the demand is there, and we're always going to have English 101, English 102, Art 110, and Music 110 in our courses, we want to look into what it means with human resources to hire more affiliates, which are people who work for us that are qualified through USC to teach college coursework, so they can potentially we have about 50% of our professors are affiliate professors and 50% are adjuncts. So those affiliate professors, they can teach 2 college courses and then 2 regular high school courses, and they have flexibility. They use the same textbooks. We would like to see what it would mean for us in terms of HR to gain more affiliates, and not necessarily have to depend on an adjunct who might move away or decide, I don't want to do this anymore. Adjuncts can be good for our students too as well for courses that are less common. We want to continue to recruit student groups who have been historically underrepresented in advanced learning opportunities. So we're identifying those gaps to say, why is it that folks aren't signing up for these classes, and what do we need to do to go out there and recruit so that we don't have gaps in opportunities and gaps in students achieving that commitment, number one. We want to continue to grow that Midlands Tech College. Due to their accreditation, we can't call it a Midlands Tech campus at LTC, but we want a constant presence where students know when I go to Lexington Technology Center, Midlands Tech is down the hall. And that's what we want to continue to grow and partner all the programs we can with some college credit. And we want to continue to explore different kind of highly intensive and immersive college experience for especially first-generation college students who might not go if we don't find a safe place for them to really explore and grow that belief system. So it's been exciting work for us around the growth and challenging with the fast growth, but our kids are reaping the benefits. So I'm going to hand it over to Kimberly Freeman, and she's going to talk to us about the people who are doing the hard work, the teacher leaders.
Thank you, absolutely. So as you already know, we have really amazing teachers who are a part of our work here in Lexington 1, and one of the ways that we've really work to engage them is through a teacher leadership council. And I think I had a chance to speak to you in March about the TLC and wanted to just share a little bit about how we ended the year. So during the 18-19 school year, our teacher leadership council was comprised of 67 members representing each of our schools, and we had other folks in and out as well as a part of that work. But specifically, we worked in 6 working groups to respond to feedback from teachers across the system and also to advocate for our profession at large. And so each of those working groups had a focal issue and a work plan for how to address that across the year. And so it was really exciting. I think what happened in this past year is that our TLC members really began to partner with and engage with our central services divisions in some new ways. And so we saw a lot of exciting work in that. Our professional learning team worked very closely with instructional services to completely revamp our collaborative planning guide for teachers. They shifted the model for the instructional fair based on feedback from our teachers. What we're really seeing teachers ask for is collaborative time to plan together. And so this group really rose up and responded to that. They looked at our calendar for collaborative planning for this year and said, hey, can we reconsider some things and look at some days differently? They brought a proposal to Dr. Talley and to SLT on that. And so they're really seeing changes as a result of what they're doing, which is very exciting. We had a group that worked on a retention spotlight. Our recruitment team worked with human resources to look at the recruitment fair very differently. So there were a lot of places where we saw that work happening. We had a teacher voice team who worked to collaborate with the Office of Student Services in responding to some student support. And then a teacher leadership group working with Mary Gaskins and our teacher leadership work to see how teacher leaders fit into our executive leadership program and make sure that we are honoring and supporting the work that teacher leaders do every day. And then I actually flipped back in my calendar right before I came up here. I think the last time I had a chance to speak to you was 2 days before our pizza and policy event in March. So we had a chance to share the excitement of that, and then you guys were there, and many of you had a chance to be a part of that night, where we had 152 members of our community come together around the table and engage with our legislators in some really productive conversations that have led to some really great continued relationships. And so we're excited about that partnership that we're building as we look towards another legislative season and what that might bring to us this year. So when we consider this year and those next steps, we want to certainly continue the work as well as embrace a few new things to think about. So we're going to continue enhancing advocacy for our profession. I heard, in fact, from our professional advocacy team today, they're already at work on a proposal that they're going to bring to Dr. Little and to ask about some ways we can engage with legislators this fall and not wait so long in the season. And so we haven't even really started yet because TLC can't totally kick off until we name Teachers of the Year. So we haven't fully started for this year, and they're already developing proposals, in these crazy, busy first few weeks of school. So I think that really speaks to the value of this work for our teachers. We're going to continue working on ways that we retain and recognize the ways that we recruit and support our teachers. We're going to keep talking about these collaborative opportunities. We're going to keep getting feedback, and then we're really excited this year. Our teacher voice team is going to come around the table and tackle an issue that you've, I'm sure, heard lots about. We're going to explore what some alternative weather makeup day structures might look like, and they're going to research how that's happening in other districts, what the state guidelines are around, and then get some feedback from across the system to hopefully bring something to you. And so we really want our teachers to lead in that work so that they, they can see what's working and not working and respond. So we're very excited about that. You may have heard this, I may have shared this with some of you before, but we this summer gathered our TLC members, some of them together, to do some really deep work around the leadership continuum. And we circled up at the end of the day to just reflect on the work. And it was one of those heavy lifting, thinking kind of days when everybody's brains fried at the end. And we just asked folks to share, like, what makes you hopeful about this work as we get to the end. And one of our members who's pretty quiet, we don't hear from him a whole lot, but when he speaks, it's definitely worth stopping and listening to. He said, I've been a part of a lot of committees in this district and in other districts in my career, but being a part of this teacher leadership group is the first time that I've really felt like the work I'm doing is meaningful and results in action really happening. And so I think it's just exciting to see how our teachers are responding to this opportunity to speak in to so many different things and feel like their voice is valued. And so we're excited about where that continues to go as we look towards this year, and we look forward to sharing more with you. All right, I think now, Dr. Little, I'm turning it back over to you.
Thank you very much. And of course, I'll leave my notes at the table. I do want to, are we having an official math correction? I do want to go back to a previous slide. We do have an official math correction very quickly. This is why we look at things sometimes. So let's take a look here. What's our math correction there, Mr. Poole?
So I did not come through a workshop approach of math. So I have multiplied college. It is $1,500 per course in-state, about $1,500 per hour out of state, but $1,500 per course in-state. So that would be more like 2.3 million savings this year. So my apologies for the bad math training. I did not go to Lexington One schools.
So just wanted to FYI everybody there. The math looked funny to me too, so that's why I said something. Well, and but listen, what this is, we're speaking what our future goals are going to be. That's where they're headed. We're speaking those into existence. I have no problem with setting the bar really, really high. I don't want to spend too much time on that because I'll talk a lot about, as you know, I'll talk a lot about dual enrollment. All right, so what I would like to do next is we'd like to do a discussion protocol with everybody. So here's what I'd like for you to do. I'm going to give you, as you've had a chance to reflect on these 5 strategies, I want to give you, 3 minutes I want to give you 3 minutes to just reflect on this 3-2-1. 3 things that you've learned, 2 things that you're excited about, 1 thing that you're curious about. And we'll do a 3-2-1 protocol on this particular piece. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do that individually, and then we are going to, then we'll do some small group and then sharing as well. Now, overall, out of the 5 strategies, what are 3 things that you learned, 2 things that you're excited about, 1 thing that you're curious about? All right, board, what I'd like for you to do now is you have an elbow partner. So Kyle and Tim, Mike and Cindy, Jada and Anne Marie. If y'all would talk with each other, and of course, I don't want to leave SLT out. Y'all are certainly invited to play along. If Jeff, you want to come up here with this group here, they're going to have a group of 3. And what I'd like for you to do is come to consensus about your 3 things. Let's do your 3-2-1. And then your group will share to the whole group. So I'm going to give you about 3 more minutes to do that and to talk independently. Well, not independently. That would not be talk independently. It would be kind of a weird direction. So speak just in your small group, and then we'll share with the whole group. All right, if I could interrupt you, I was trying to give you just enough time to finish up. Board, if you'll recall, if you will make sure when you share, if you'll turn on your mic so that we can share. Do y'all have a mic? Do I see you with a microphone? We'll make sure you get one. So so we'll go ahead and just start over here, and we'll work this way. We'll go group, group, and group. So, well, that's okay. So share what you feel led to share. This would be like church. You just share whatever you feel led to share.
Well, I'm going to combine what you learned and what you're most excited about, because Jada had the same thing on what you learned that I had on excited, and vice versa. I had what you learned and what she had that she was excited about. And those two things were just the growth of the push-in model and just how we're using that for the special learners, and just excited to see that that's growing. We didn't realize, or I didn't realize, that we were using that for the ESOL, and I think that's a really great thing to be doing. And then the other was just the everything that Ms. Freeman talked about around teacher voice. That we just love to hear that our teachers have a voice, and that they are able to work on things that are meaningful to them, and also that they are able to see change and progress come out of those things that they articulate. Did I cover those pretty well? Yeah. And then we had very different things on what we're curious about, so I'm just going to tell you both. Here, I'll let you tell you.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what an average day looked like in a lab site or model classroom. I know we saw those on a school visit, but like I was telling Anne Marie, I'd like to walk through those with a teacher and see exactly from beginning to end what they go through. And just to add on to another thing she said about teacher voice, I was part of the policy and pizza night, and one of the things the teacher said when they were asked a question, I don't remember what the question was, what was difficult or about their job, it was, I remember a teacher saying it was having a vision inside an already established system. So I think it's great that they're having a voice and that they feel like something's being done.
And I'm just going to add something that I was curious about, actually from Dr. Phillips's presentation, was about the support team meetings, and I was just curious if any consideration, I mean, I know everybody's time is very busy, if any consideration had been given to including a peer administrator from another school in those teams, because a lot of times in my mind these support teams are the bosses, and sometimes it helps when there's a peer there that sees that, you know, oh, well, you know, I had this challenge at my school. I can give them some good support and advice on this. And I know the principals have meetings, collaborative meetings weekly, but I think sometimes a support group that includes, you know, a little bit more of a peer voice could be beneficial. So.
You have something?
Yeah, I do. So one of the things that came up when we were presenting this to principals was possibly having sort of a repository of these agendas so that other principals, maybe from, like, if I'll just use River Bluff as an example. So let's say we're at Meadow Glen Middle doing a meeting or a protocol, and have that agenda someplace where Luke could maybe go in and look at that agenda and say, hey, I'm interested in what is going on here, and maybe come along just to see. We haven't put that in place yet because we're kind of working out the details on it, but that is kind of along those lines. It makes it more, since like you said, they have a lot to do, but if they found time to come to that, then, you know, certainly we would welcome that.
All right, good stuff. And we can certainly schedule an opportunity to go see the lab sites in action. Now, did you want lab sites or model classrooms? Did you say lab sites? Okay. I bet we can make that happen on one of our things. Look, we've got a thumbs up from the peanut gallery, so we're in good shape. All right, Cindy, Mike, you want to share your...
I think the thing that I was let's see, the first thing is the three things that we learned. It was a thread in all the presentations, was that nothing's carved in stone, and that y'all are working from the bottom up instead of top-down information. You're going in there and you're presenting the ideas, and then some things just haven't worked, and you're stepping back and changing and modifying. I always think that's impressive because it's easy to preach, but it's hard when somebody's the walker and the talker to listen to them and understand, they're living it and they're stepping back and modifying. I didn't know about the workshops for co-teaching, and I love that whole inclusivity model. And then the 97% of principals and assistant principals who attended the push-in model training, I was really impressed with that. To me, when you're you have a new program and you have that much response, it just says a lot about something you're really committed to. On excitement, this is just because it's so fresh, were there alternatives for the weather makeup day, and there was a terrific article, I think it was in the Post and Courier today, about the technology makeup days that Berkeley County is using, and they're working with Molly and the State Department of Ed, and it kind of walked through that whole model, and I think with all our push for technology that there are definitely some alternatives, and I keep thinking we're not going to have weather makeup days within a week or two of starting school, but I don't think it's been the past 3 years. I think we need to grasp that. And the other thing, I was just so excited about the whole push-in. I just thought every aspect of that, whether they were on the chart or not, was really good. And then the thing I'm just really curious about, and I know we've talked about it, but just the continuous recruitment process for the kids that are in the dual enrollment, and just because Clark did such a good job with that when he was at Pillion, getting those kids to understand that all means all, and exposing those kids to the potential of college, and just what can we do to continue to make that recruitment model robust and get kids to just see all means all, and that there is that future for them if they want it.
All right, there were three buzz terms, I guess, for lack of better words, that I really liked a lot. The first one was the gradual release of responsibility, show, don't tell, professional learning, learning by example. That's great. And push-in service. Cindy and I were talking about that. That term is new to me, or at least I don't remember it. So that's also great. But the dual enrollment really excites me. Of course, it has since we first implemented that. Really excited about the growth at Gilbert High and at Pillion High, especially Pillion, and the addition of new courses, especially the pharmaceutical courses. I mean, this is something can lead to huge money-making jobs, and the overall growth of that program is just huge financial savings for our families.
Right. Group?
I think they stole most of our thunder, but Kyle and I talked, we were excited to see the push-in model. Didn't know a lot of what was going on there until we heard about it, but we think it's going to be a good thing. That was one of our takeaways. Also, the bottom-up learning, teachers having a voice in the system, and the demonstration, the modeling. We think that's a good thing. We learned more about that. The two things we're most excited about, we talked about, was dual enrollment, and of course the college credit. We think that's a winner. We want to see that. We would be excited to see that continue and continue to grow and be something that is modeled by our district for the rest of the state to follow.
And as far as, kind of the idea of where you're curious about, I guess, sort of being outside the box kind of thinking, are we making one chicken sandwich at the end of the day? Okay, so always look to Chick-fil-A as kind of like the embodiment of what it means to be a really well-ran business, a good, just a good understanding of people's behavior, and really kind of addressing that. And at the end of the day, you get one chicken sandwich. And it doesn't matter if it's in Lexington, South Carolina, or Pensacola, Florida, it's the same chicken sandwich. But that's not easy. It's not easy to, and I can tell you from the way we've kind of multiplied our offices throughout the state, it's a challenge to try to get one piece of communication, everybody feeling ownership. It's very, very difficult. And if you go to any of our sites, or if you go to any school, I'm willing to bet the one thing that's going to be brought up is communication. We wish we had more communication. And that's a very hard thing to do. And it kind of trickles down to some degree when we were talking about dual enrollment. So for example, I've got an 8th grader, okay? And he is most definitely my engineer. He is not medical, I can promise you. He is not medical.
Well, not yet. We don't know that
No,
yet.
we
don't
know.
know that yet.
We
He's still
know.
got time,
We know.
Kyle. He's still
We
got
know.
time.
I've seen him DFO in the sight of his own blood. And for those that don't know DFO, that's done fell out. He done fell out. Light on, Mike. How's it going with it? But yep. So he's going into his 8th grade year, and you talked about the governor's school for mathematics. Well, in order to do that, he has to have completed Algebra 1 by the end of his 8th grade year, going into Algebra 2 his 2nd grade year. Had we not heard about that from a family friend, we would not have known about that. And so again, it's just those little bits of communication that are just very, very difficult that push yourself 1 year forward. Well, we would have liked to have known that last year, for example. So that's, it's just those little pieces of communication that are so hard to do when you're building a superstructure and you're also trying to fill in the infrastructure at the same time.
All right. I thank you very much for your participation and your willingness to listen and to take notes and to provide your feedback. What I would like for us to do now, I believe, is we have next up, we are going to do about an 8-minute break. We're going to capture a couple of minutes back on our agenda. And so, Josh, if you don't mind giving me an 8-minute timer, and we're going to take a break, and then we'll be right back. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please join us back at the table, please, and find your seats. You've already heard about 5 key strategies that we are in full implementation. Next, you're going to hear about our portfolio projects. Now, what are our portfolio projects? If you recall, these are also, we do consider these key strategies in implementation. But what we did with portfolio projects is we tried to identify 2 high-leverage strategies that if we provided them the energy, the time, the resources, and support, they could make a big difference in a fairly short period of time. And so what you've seen is we have Project Hope, who is, and they're here represented with these 3 gentlemen here in the back. 4, I'll include Jeff Caldwell. I'll use that term loosely when I say gentlemen. And then over here we have Leadership Development, led by Mary Gaskins. And so what I'd like for us to do here, I'm going to give you directions first, and then I'm going to allow you to introduce the people that you have. So what we are going to do, if Anne-Marie, Jada, and Tim, if you will begin with Leadership Development, if you'll go over here. And then Kyle, Mike, and Cindy, if you will go back to Project Hope. You're going to go back to there. You're going to learn more about what is taking place. And then about halfway through, we'll flip-flop, and you'll go to the other project. Okay, so feel free, ask questions. We wanted to provide you some individual face time, whatever is, whatever you're curious about, whatever you're excited about. Well, not yet. Hold on just a second. I'll dismiss you in just a second. We got to do some other things first. But that's really what I'd like for you to do is we're going to spend some real quality time back there. Do not feel rushed. And then let's have folks introduce each other. So Mary?
So we have a number of leaders who have participated in our leadership development programs. Jennifer Mcnair is our newly hired principal who was in our Aspiring Principals Academy Cohort 2 at Meadow Glen Elementary School. She's serving. Nicole Mitchell has been part of so many different projects we've had with leadership development. She helped develop our standards. She helped develop the leadership continuum. And most recently, she helped develop our induction program for new leaders and is one of the facilitators of the program. And I got to see Nicole tonight talking with Casey Davis. They would not know each other and be friends at the board meeting if Nicole was not one of the facilitators for our New Leader Induction Institute. So Casey Davis is a new assistant principal at Pillion Elementary School, was a teacher leader, part of our Aspiring Assistant Principals program, and now part of our New Leader program. Jacob Nelson was part of our APA Cohort 1 and is in his 2nd year of a principalship, so we'll see what he's learned now after 1 year. Natalie Osborne-Smith was also part of Aspiring Principals Academy Cohort 1 and now has a central services position as our coordinator of professional learning. Brandon Baskett was part of APA Cohort 2. He's an assistant principal at Lexington High School. He also participated in the pilot of our leadership continuum and standards and coached a teacher leader. And then we have Kristen Taylor and Carissa Cockrell. They've been teaching kindergarten. If they look a little tired, they've been up since like 3 a.m. They were the 2 of the 3 facilitators for our teacher leadership group and the Teacher Leadership Council and have really helped us this year envision what we want to do in terms of teacher leadership. So they're all happy to answer your questions.
And back here, you've heard me speak several times about Project Hope, and I thought it was time that I actually bring in the folks that actually do the work, do the heavy lifting with this. So to my right is Chris Rabin. He's the director of AES, the Alternative Educational Services, formerly known as FOCUS, which is a prong of a side of the triangle. Zan Tracy Pender, who is the director of school counseling and advisement, and he'll talk to us about the mental health component. And then Clark Cooper, who is the director of student administration, and he'll talk about the drug and alcohol offenses and how we've restructured that. So that's who these folks are. And like I said, they're the ones that do the heavy lifting, so they have all the answers to your questions.
So again, Anne-Marie, Jada, and Tim, if you will go over to Leadership Development, and then Kyle, Mike, and Cindy, if you will go back to Project Hope, and we'll put a 20-minute clock on for right now, and we'll sort of see where it's at, and then we'll be switching. So we'll go ahead and start. And if anybody else wants to get up and move around and ask questions, you're certainly more than welcome to. Up those final comments. All right, I'm going to go and interrupt. Thank you very much. That 20 minutes was fine. What I would like for you to do now, if the groups would go ahead and switch, and we'll go and get the clock started. But we certainly have a lot to discuss. So go ahead and if board members, if y'all will switch groups for me. I hate to interrupt the good conversation, but if we don't mind, if we can make it our way back to our seats. Again, thank you very much. If we could have everybody move back to their seats. I personally want to really give a great shout out to the folks who have come and participated in this portion. Thank you all very much. I know it's been a long day for you, and we greatly appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you. Y'all have a great evening. All right, so we've spent tonight already a significant amount of time talking about strategies in implementation. And so you're seeing the strategies in implementation, but I don't want to, again, one thing I want to add about that is again, keeping in mind, strategy and implementation does not mean concrete implementation where we cannot move and we cannot make changes, right? What you're seeing are strategies and implementation that are in stages of evolution and improving and getting feedback and getting better. And that's an essential part of our strategic plan. So now what we would like to do is we would like to move and talk about our key strategies in design. So we're going to have, I believe we have 4 folks that are going to come up here for a second. They're going to need a microphone. So I'm going to tell you which strategy in design that each person is representing. So Ryan Poole is back with us tonight, and he is going to talk about the middle school schedule. He'll be talking about that key strategy in design. Devana will be talking about the key strategy customer service, and I know that is an umbrella term, but we'll kind of scroll down a little bit on that as well. Howard is going to talk to us about power skills, and Van is going to discuss, he's going to bat double duty today. He's going to do elementary and secondary in regards to student advocacy. And what we're going to do, I've got a couple of questions that they've prepped for, and we're just going to walk through those questions. And Van, we're going to start with you first. And so the question that I would like for each member to talk about is how does this strategy in design advance the strategic plan? So Van, will you talk a little bit about how student advocacy advances the strategic plan?
So our strategy is that we will inspire the conditions that lead to success in each school by utilizing a system of advocacy for each child that facilitates healthy social and emotional growth. So the premise there is that students come to us with social and emotional issues that have to be dealt with. And as a matter of fact, we're seeing more and more of that. And so in order for us to certainly achieve the academic side of the strategic plan, we need to tend to the social and emotional needs of students. And historically in our district, we've done a really good job of educating the entire child. And so this is something that we have some specific strategies around now.
Okay. Devana, will you talk about customer service and how that advances our strategic plan?
I would love to. So that, of course, goes with System Commitment 3, which talks about our schools being service-oriented systems, centers of learning. Did I cut out? Committed to family and community partnerships. And of course, we don't mean that just to be schools. We mean that all aspects of the district, which would include us here at Central Services as well. And as Dr. Little alluded to, customer service can be a very broad topic, and that, of course, is why we are still under developing this topic and thinking through what that kind of can look like. But when we started trying to think through that last year, we kind of took it in 2 parts. And one was really looking at central services, who are our customers? What does that mean? What does that look like? If we dig down into that, what do they really need? So those of us here at Central Services all worked with our departments, and we did some protocols. We did a wagon wheel protocol. We identified, who our customers were and what are some ways that we can really think about how we can serve them better. And then the second prong of that was really strengthening our family and community partnerships, and we of course, we do that in a number of ways in our schools, but we want to continue to grow in that. A lot of you have, as board members, of course, have participated in a number of those, looking at student-led conferences, looking at community showcases in Gilbert and Pillion, and community service events. So we want to continue to really expand that definition of customer service, think about what that really means and looks like both at the school level and here at Central Services.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about the middle school schedule? How does that support the strategic plan?
So when we started talking about what we wanted from the strategic plan, this idea that all students advance on time with the skills that they need to be successful, and all the while learning specific power skills, having the opportunities to have different kind of experiences with partnerships in the community, and teachers to have the planning time and the time they need to individualize for students. We tried to look at scheduling instead of as this sort of you build the schedule and then fit in what you want. We tried to reverse that, especially with the opening of a new middle school. It gave us the chance to get people together and say, so what is it that we want middle school time and space and place to result in? And then let's build the schedule that's going to get us that. So we looked at a lot of different models from around the Southeast and the nation, research from Hanover, talking to our teachers, our students, our administrators, and really brought the principals together and said, we don't want to lose anything that we've had, but there are certain things we want to gain, and that's dedicated advocacy time to address the social and emotional learning of students. That's got to be a part of our middle school experience. We've got to have flexibility, so it's not one size fits all. You don't have to give up performing arts in order to get RTI services. It shouldn't be one or the other. So how do you build a schedule that gets to all of that to meet those commitments for all children? So we landed on a schedule that we're trying at 5 of our 8 middle schools now that allows more flexible options and a really different use of time and space and place for kids. But it's allowing us to still grow language learners while providing individualized service, while teachers can plan more individually. So it was really reversing that idea of build the schedule and then fit in your goals. What are your goals, and then build the schedule that meets it was the idea.
Howard, talk to us about power skills.
So power skills directly address system commitment number 2, which is to ensure that teaching and learning develop power skills in all students. And just a quick reminder, those power skills that we've identified in our strategic plan are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, interpersonal skills, perseverance, accountability, and the willingness to take risks. And so this strategy also directly addresses our district mission to cultivate a caring community where all learners are extraordinary communicators, collaborators, creators, and critical thinkers. And we know we're doing some amazing things in these areas right now. But I think our goal, and I think we'll probably have the opportunity to get to that, is to make sure that we have a system in place that allow us to do all of those things for all students, and figure out how we get the right conditions in place to make sure that's a reality across all of our schools.
Well, Howard, let's stay there. Let's stay with you then,
Okay.
and talk
Sure.
about those goals. Can you give some more specifics on what are the implementation goals of Power Skills this year?
Sure, absolutely. So one goal for us is to form a project team to study a more systematic way to assess and promote all the power skills to all students across our system. Like I said, we're doing some really great things in a lot of those areas, but I don't know that we can say that we have something in place that allows us to help all of our students address each and every one of those skills that are so critical to their success now and in their future. And so the question that's going to drive our research is, how do our schools purposefully create the conditions by which all students grow in the skills needed to thrive in life and work. So really the key piece there is what are the conditions that must be present in order for all of these power skills to come together. And we're not going to be able to address them in isolation. We need to have a system in place that gives students the opportunities to really grow in all of those areas simultaneously. And then the goal we'll work toward this year is to provide a strategic recommendation by the end of the year that includes a current state analysis, a theory of action, a logic model, an action plan, and then a structure for an after-action study.
Okay, good stuff. Van, Ryan just a minute ago talked about the schedule and being part of the student advocacy schedule as well. What are some other the implementation goals for student advocacy?
So just wanted to, well, overall, the goal is to make sure that every child, and we say all means all, that every child has an adult in their building that is well-versed on their needs, their social, emotional, academic needs, and that they can advocate for that child. And so in terms of the scheduling, I know that at the high school level, there are frameworks in place that address this. We have CREW at River Bluff and Gilbert. We have Impact at White Knoll High School, Pride at Pillion, and Advisory at Lexington High School. And these are times where adults can work with students in a smaller group setting and can discuss things that may not necessarily be about academics. It may be those social and emotional things that hamper their education. So it's also very much designed to create a positive school culture, a culture of belonging, a culture of cooperation and collaboration. So those kinds of things are going on at the high school and at the middle school. One other thing that we know is happening is that students that have been assigned to AES get regular visits from their home schools to check in to see how they're progressing and to address any needs that they have. Now at the elementary level, of course, we have 17 schools, so we have a variety of approaches, and of course those students are in a self-contained setting, so they have a teacher that certainly can advocate for them, but we look for ways to make those groups smaller so that kids have more individualized attention. So we do things like morning meetings where we get the day started off, kind of set the day because kids come to us from all sorts of things that they're bringing to us from home. And we also have quite a few very good mentoring programs and extensive partnerships throughout the community where we have volunteers that come in from churches and businesses that work in small groups to address this, and they can serve as an advocate for a child as well. But the idea is that every child has that advocate, and I think at this point, you know, we have worked first with our most needy students, but the goal is certainly to expand that to get to make sure all students have that advocate.
Okay, Devonna, talk to us about customer service. What do we want to accomplish this year? How can we move customer service forward?
Well, if you just put it quite simply, we want to have next level customer service. And while that sounds quite simple, it's really quite complex because we want to truly dig down and make sure that we are finding out what our customers' true needs are and making sure that we are just digging until we are meeting all of those needs, whatever they might be. So gathering that feedback sometimes is a little more complex than it seems. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. You know, when we did our research here at the district office and we did our protocols, of course, you know, we were able to name customers that you would expect us to name, students and parents and schools. And but when we really reflected on you know, what does that really look like, you know, when we serve each other? we had some work to do with that. So we did seek some feedback. Our principals gave us some really great feedback. So we named some specific strategies based on their feedback that we wanted to work on this year. They gave us some specific feedback around team learning that they wanted us to adjust. Each of our SLT members are going to have a principal advisory group. So each chief is going to have a group of principals to give them feedback on specific actions or specific, just really anything that they would like to that chief to hear about, whether it's feedback that's coming from their parents or from their students or things that are happening in their school. So that's really great. Just communication, we've talked a lot about that tonight. So we're going to have a resource hub and a centralized directory now for schools to be able to use. We've talked a lot about central service presence in schools, and Dr. Little has, asked us to increase that. So we're going to be working through some volunteer programs and some opportunities for not just instruction, but for other departments to be active in the schools. Principals and teachers and others want to see us out there, and they want us to see us involved, and they want us to know what's happening and what it looks like in the classrooms. And then you heard Dr. Phillips talk about those strategic support teams and how different members of our central services teams are serving on those. So that was based on some of the feedback that we heard as we dug into the customer service piece. So it's nice to see that even though we're digging into customer service, that's connecting with different departments and instruction, and all the different pieces are starting to connect together, which just shows us that's the way it's supposed to be, and we have a lot more work to do, a lot more feedback to gather, but we do really want to dig into that and continue to explore more options on how we really can connect and take that to the next level.
Okay, so Mr. Poole, your strategy here is a little more defined, right? And you're actually already in some level of implementation now. What does implementation, what do implementation goals look like for your strategy, which is a little different than the other three?
Okay, and there's a basic level of assessment of the student growth and student achievement that we hope to see change as a result of the scheduling changes we've put into place. So there are a lot of measures of what makes a school successful or a student successful. So test scores aren't all it, and attendance isn't all it, or behavior, but it's a whole picture. But there are some basic assessments that we want to see change. We saw when you look at state report cards, our district is a premier district across the state and the Southeast and probably the nation. Our middle schools in Lexington 1 were not progressing students either in achievement or growth at the same rate as our elementary schools and our high schools. And we wanted to know why that was and what we could do differently so that those very crucial years of like 11 to 14, when there's so much more turmoil, the kids are getting what they need. So we want to see no middle schools at an unsatisfactory rating on a state report card ever. We want to move all middle schools to surpassing average on their state report cards, and those take into a number of factors. We wanted to increase the amount of time that students got in language arts, math, science, and social studies, and advocacy. We wanted to see in terms of growth, the state provides what's called a growth index for students. So we want to see a positive growth index for students. That means, in terms of their movement from grade 7 to grade 6, they're progressing upward in the standards at grade level and not regressing at all. So we want to see that at all of our middle schools. And particularly a positive growth index for the bottom 20% category as identified by the state. So students who have struggled to be at grade level, we've got to see a higher rate of growth from those students to raise their achievement and close the gaps. And we hope to see that through these changes in the amount of time, while not losing some of the things that have made our middle schools really special in terms of their exploration of STEM and STEAM and world languages and the arts.
Okay. So we'll start with Devonna if you want to kick off this one, because I really see customer service as we talked about it being sort of this nebulous idea. What are the challenges associated as we move forward in customer service?
Well, I think always, with customer service, you want to do more and more and more. We brought up the idea, for example, of volunteering in schools, and everybody was thrilled with it, and they want to give lots of time and do lots of things, and probably want to give up their day job to go read the kids all day, right? So, we want to do more and more and more, and that's a great thing, and we should. But, trying to balance that, trying to make sure we are gathering all the feedback, trying to remember who our true customers are, trying to get to that hard yes, trying to keep that all in balance and check. It is sometimes a difficult balance to get to all that. But, we have to do that. It's our job to think outside the box and to get to that yes and to find the way to make sure that we are doing what's right for students in our building. And so, sometimes time does become a challenge, and those opportunities are there because you do still have to balance the work of it all, and just making time to do that. But we're committed to do that this year and to get to that next level and to find the time and make the opportunities available to that. So.
Okay, and Howard, to go to you, so this idea of wanting to do more and more and more and more, and you're talking about power skills, and our days are rather busy. Somebody mentioned that over here. Our days are rather busy as it is. We've got these really great posters in some schools, and how do we, what's the challenges associated with moving from the poster to implementation?
Sure. So it really is a good question, because a challenge that we have is to determine how to best assess the development of all power skills in all students. And I'll share with you, I was in a school strategic team meeting today, and we were doing a data dig on their test scores, and they had great data there, but what was not represented was the work that they're doing for their students on a daily basis to teach them how to be relevant in the future that they're going to inherit, how to work with each other in collaborative groups, how to strengthen their communication skills so that they can effectively complete projects and solve tasks and problems. And though we don't have a metric in place for that, and so that's something that we're going to work on this year as we partner with Ed Leader 21 and some minds across the nation in a work group that's focused on that type of assessment. Some people that are trying to do the same things that we are. Alliance for Education. We're looking to figure out how are other people doing it, or what are the same questions that we share. How can we find answers to that, so that we can prepare our schools, give our schools something to track and figure out how to get better. Establishing a baseline of the current abilities of our students in each of those areas, benchmarking growth along the way, and then improving our process based on our analysis of those data points. If we don't know where we are and don't know where we're headed, then it's kind of tough for us to make that progress. So that's one thing that's going to be a challenge, and we're going to try to tackle this year. Another challenge is to determine how we create those conditions that offer a holistic approach to student power school development, instead of really just focusing on one of them at a time, because it can't be done in that way. We can do some great things around student collaboration. We can give them opportunities to be creative through projects and solve problems. But if we're really going to give a student an opportunity to develop in a way that's going to allow them to be successful, we've got to figure out a way to build a fertile foundation for them to grow in all of those areas at the same time. So it'll be a challenge, but one we're excited about digging into this year.
So it sounds like you're tackling some of these complexities associated with the power skills, and I think there's some real complexities also with student advocacy. What are those complexities and challenges associated with moving student advocacy forward?
Well, I think that certainly time and people would be the two obstacles that I would see. If you're really going to form small groups where adults can take the time to really learn about a student and be able to positively advocate for that student, that certainly takes personnel. And so we've done a really good job of utilizing our personnel within the school, but we've also sought out means outside of the school. And that's where the partnerships come in and the mentor programs, which have been very successful throughout the district. So it takes people, it takes creative scheduling because you have to have time during the day to address these things. So I know that at the middle and the high school level, the frameworks and the scheduling work that Ryan's done has really focused on the advocacy piece. And at the elementary level, our principals are really analyzing their schedules and I'll tell you, if you want to see a jam-packed schedule, you look at an elementary school schedule, it's jam-packed. But those guys have been really creative at finding time to pay attention to the social and emotional needs of students. And that's where you see things like the morning meetings come into play. Really, I think that the people and the time factor is something that we have to continuously battle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ryan, let's come back to the middle school schedule. So middle school is my background, and this is one of the innovations that I'm most excited about is how we're changing the time and how we use that time at the middle school level. But I know there's some challenges associated with the implementation that we've probably already seen in the first few weeks of school. What do some of those challenges look like?
Well, if you've never built an elementary or a middle or a high school schedule, it is it's a truly gratifying, creative process. But it's kind of like doing a Sudoku puzzle or something that never quite works out the way you want it to. There's a lot of goals that you're trying to meet, and you manipulate time and structures and people in certain ways, and then you find your roadblock. So I thought I had it, but now that person's not certified to teach there, so I got to look in a different way. Or I thought I had it, but my sixth graders haven't eaten, and that's not okay. So it really is a neat process to go through the scheduling, but it's challenging, and there's some compromise there. You want so many different things for all the kids, and you have to kind of pick your priorities and say, I've got to give a little here to get this. And then once you do that, just the logistical pieces of certifications and lunches and is 5 minutes enough to get from here to here and those pieces, then there's the piece of that human element of change. So we just invested years in doing things a certain way, and now we want to adjust, and we're going to continue to adjust and grow. And that's the piece, the message there is it's never going to stop. We'll always kind of keep evolving. But with change leadership, there's challenge, and people take a lot of pride in what they do, and and it's personal for them. So to ask for more different is just an ongoing hard thing to do. And then you've got a lot of other stakeholders who also want what they want. So there's a lot of conversations about, I know your kid probably is going to be a Hollywood movie star, but right now I need them to do some robots, because we want to develop the whole child. And that's what 11 to 14 needs to do. When you get into high school, we can start to kind of specialize, but I need you to explore right now. And those conversations are there too. So it's exciting challenges, but challenging nonetheless.
So the last question that the group's going to tackle, if the strategy, this is one of my go-to questions, right? So you've heard 4 different strategies. If these strategies are fully implemented, what will it look like? And this is often a question that we don't ask ourselves as we're in this planning stage. So we're going to start with Howard and kind of work our way back down this way. So Howard, if tomorrow power skills were fully implemented and we were at 100% capacity, what would it look like in our schools?
I think it'd look pretty amazing. Simply put, every school would have the appropriate structure in place for all students to grow in all power skills. Not some students in all power skills, not all power skills in some students. So I said, every school has appropriate structures in place for all students to grow in all power skills. And so, the challenges are there where we do some things real well. We do things well that have been in place, and that we've gone down those roads and have met some of those challenges. But some of these things we don't know how to do yet, or we don't know how to make those conditions available for all students within all of those schools. So it'll be about finding out how as a system can we have programs in place where students, by virtue of being in our system, can't opt out of growing in all of those different places. They're going to learn how to persevere and not just how to collaborate. They're going to learn how to take risks and not just be real creative in the program that they're involved in. And so when we have that in place, I think we will have accomplished our goal.
Fantastic. Ryan?
If and when we achieve our goals, students won't have to make really unfortunate choices, because there's going to be flexibility for them to have what they need and what they want, and pursue their interests without having to give up more than they should have to give up. Along those lines, they can have a schedule that meets their needs, but also allows them to get services from a gifted and talented teacher, an ESOL teacher, a special education teacher, without having to pull them out of classes or change their schedule so that they can be served. 100% of our middle schoolers have an adult advocate that they spend quality time with, dedicated to both responding to their needs and proacting to what an early adolescent student is going to face in the next year or so. And literacy and numeracy are developed in personalized ways for the student who is far above grade level and the student who has struggled. So all those things can come to place through the schedule.
I'm going to follow up really quickly and put you on the spot. You talked about 5 out of 8. You talked about 5 out of 8. Are there plans to bring on 8 out of 8 when it comes to middle schools?
So we're looking through school support meetings at how it's working. We're looking at the successes that we're having and what we're having to give up all along the way. Early signs indicate we're going to be asking, what's it mean in terms of resource allocation to move in this direction for all schools, because the start, even with all that change stuff I was talking about, the start has been pretty positive.
Great. Devonna?
All right, so when we started with this idea of customer service, this really big, broad idea, we weren't sure exactly what direction it was headed, but what we were sure of is where we did not want it to go. And we did not want it to be just about how to answer the phone or how to smile at someone when they come in the door. Absolutely, those things are important, and we want people to have a warm and welcoming culture when they come into our schools or when they come into central services, but that's not simply what this is about. This is about big picture of culture and how we serve students and how we serve families and how we serve each other. And so we have a lot of work to do to dig into that. So we hope what this looks like when it's fully implemented is a whole lot of people working together collaboratively very hard to ensure that we are living up to our mission and vision, that each child is having the opportunity to design and empower their own future, and that we are really living up to that all means all, that we are providing the services, whatever that takes, that we are diving deep to meet those needs through service, whether that's through parent, through student, through teacher, through each other, that we are really trying to meet those needs. And that is customer service, serving each other through that. So.
Now, Van, you were just talking. No, it's me, I think.
Got a new
You
battery
good?
in it, so
That's okay.
It's hot mic.
Now, you were talking earlier, I think you captured some of what it will look like when it's fully implemented, but let's speak to a couple more minutes to that.
Well, I think that in an optimal environment, we have children that feel psychologically safe within the school. They feel emotionally safe. They feel a sense of belonging, and they're functioning at an optimal level for academic achievement. So that would also mean that we have an adult in every school that is well-versed on the needs of every child. And that every kid has that advocate that can swiftly help them with their needs as they arise, and so that they can function at a high level academically.
Okay.
Yep.
Can we give these folks a round of applause? Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to the last section here. Those were key strategies in design. And you'll note there are still lots of ways to go. To quote Robert Frost, there's still miles and miles to go before we sleep when it comes to these strategies. Can we move these chairs just out of here? Sorry about that. And now we want to talk just a minute about some ideas that we explored this year that we'll see come up again in the future, or that we hope to come up again in the future. So there are three main strategies that were in exploration. The first is our early childhood centers. As you know, with the passing of our bond referendum, we've talked about repurposing the Gilbert Elementary School campus, or the current Gilbert Elementary School campus, as well as the current Pillion Middle School campus. And part of that work is going to be about our early childhood centers. Dr. Erica Bissell is leading that work. You saw her earlier tonight talking about lab sites and model classrooms. But that work is ongoing, and she's currently collaborating with district staff. We're looking at other districts with early childhood centers. And also an element to that I think is really neat is she's working with the Children's Museum in Columbia, Adventure. And Adventure, because one of the things we're looking at doing is what would it look like if we put Children's Museum's exhibits in our early childhood center? Developmentally appropriate, hands-on experiences for our families who may not be able to get to Columbia to go see Adventure. Maybe to have it in their backyard and to have that experience there, and to have it where big sister comes to register for 4K, little brother can come see it, or that our daycare centers or our Mother's Morning Out groups or those types of organizations could come and take a day trip to our early childhood center and explore and play and have fun and engage in school at a very early level. So it's about accessibility as well. In a more rural area, you're maybe less likely to have the accessibility to get there, and we would like to have those opportunities for our students. Again, you'll notice when you take a look at our commitments, that checks off a lot of the commitments that you see in our strategic plan. Secondly, I've hinted at this a little bit, and I believe we have a meeting coming up on this fairly shortly. We don't have a name for it yet. I know the board knows that I like to name things. It's one of my favorite things. And we don't have a name for it yet, but it is about academic and social emotional support, and we will be targeting our lowest paid, the families of our lowest paid employees, their children, and working with those families, long-term, consistent, overtime academic and social emotional support. We'll be defining what that looks like. We're partnering in that with the School of Medicine, Wake Forest University, and despite the fact we will not be pulling for Wake Forest University on Friday night, we will be pulling for the Tar Heels in that particular football game. But we're very thankful for what Wake Forest has done for us. They're really helping us out on this free of charge. They're just trying to let us get it off the ground and assist that with some of the past relationships and networking that I made from North Carolina. And so we're looking at what that's going to be and what that's going to look like. Again, another strategy that checks off a number of the commitment boxes. And then finally, when we talk about rigorous coursework, I do want to say Mary Gaskins is currently leading that work and trying to bring that idea off the planning table into the real world. So we're excited about that. And finally, the idea of rigorous coursework. Again, to go back to the element, there's a theme of the night, there's a theme of the year, all means all. We do want to see our students in the most rigorous coursework. We do want to see coursework that is engaging, that brings students, that challenges students. I was talking today about some of the PBL work that we're doing at Forts Pond and at Midway, giving students opportunities to engage in problems that demand lots of skills and lots of ways to solve, which is really about what real life is, right? There's not one way necessarily to solve every problem. And you have to draw from a number of your skills to do so. And we want to make sure that rigorous coursework is available to everybody. So that's part, I think we saw that in an earlier presentation, but those are part of the ideas that we're moving forward. And Dr. Talley and her instructional services team are really the leads for that instructional idea. So finally, what I would like to talk to you about as we finish up tonight, which is really not too far off of schedule. Year 2 is typically the hardest year of implementation. When you talk about any type of major initiative, year 2 is the hardest. Because at first, there's lots of excitement about planning. There's lots of excitement around dreaming of this future that is going to be new and different. You're collaborating, you're talking about all this stuff, and really there's lots of opportunities. Year 1 is incredibly exciting because in year 1 you start seeing the direct line between, hey, we did all this collaboration, we've initiated some of this new stuff, and lo and behold, it's actually making a lot of difference. So there's often lots of excitement in year 1. What makes year 2 hard is you're really now a couple of years removed from that initial excitement. And what also typically happens in year 2 is, to use a metaphor here, you begin to break through the cloud cover. And you look up and you see how high you still have to go. You see the mountaintop for what it is. Because you've made all this progress and you think, man, we've worked super hard, we've done all this work, and then you still look up and you go, gosh, we still have a long way to go. And that can actually be dispiriting. That can actually drain the energy from your implementation. And again, to extend that metaphor, the trail is a little more broken this high up. There are fewer and fewer people who have made it this far. So you don't have a whole bunch of people necessarily to come with you. The handholds are a little more treacherous because when you start talking about all means all, it's a little more dangerous now. You got to actually do something about it, and you got to get up there, and we're still climbing that mountain. So that's really the challenges associated with year 2, and I'm so pleased at the efforts we've made. I'm pleased about how far we've come, but no matter how big we become as a school district, right? This 504 kids a year since 1988. No matter how big we become as a school district, we've got to remember that we are serving individual students. We can never forget we're serving individual students. And because we are not going to be successful talking about averages. We're not going to be successful talking about averages. We're going to succeed one child at a time. And that's the focus of our strategic plan. That's the focus of the work you've seen tonight. And that's the focus that we'll continue to have in the year ahead. I want to thank these folks for all that they do. One thing we haven't talked about tonight that I do want to point out, I think I counted 18 or so people. Mary Gaskins brought half the leadership team, so I'm not 100% sure if I'm right about the number 18. But we have about 18 people that presented before you tonight to talk about our strategic plan. And what that represents is there's a lot of people with a lot of hands in this work. And I told the board when we first started the strategic plan that this was not going to be Greg Little's strategic plan. It was going to be our strategic plan. And you see lots of effort and lots of work being put in by lots of people. And that is one of the most exciting things about the work that we're doing. And so I want to thank the folks for being here tonight. Team Finance is back here. They didn't present, and the IT folks, they didn't present. They were out here just because they wanted to see what was going on. Thank you to all the presenters, and that's right, absolutely. But thank you so much to our presenters. If this group will give them a round of applause, I would appreciate that. All right. That's all we have for you tonight. And thank you so much. And we look forward to a wonderful 1920 school year.
Thank you to everybody who made tonight possible. This is one of my favorite events. You learn so much. It's a long night, but we do learn so much, and it's great information. So thank you for taking the time. Board item 7.0 is for your information. And I would like to remind everybody that on September the 25th at 5:15, the South Carolina School Boards Association is holding an advocacy meeting for our region over just as an aside, this feeds right into Greg's story, over at the Lexington 4 Early Childhood Development Center. And if you've not been out there, it is well worth your time and to go out there and see. And if Erica wants to go with us, she's more than welcome to go too. But it'll be at 5:15, and if you're interested in going, it's a great meeting. Just get with Cheryl Layton, and she'll help you set up so that you can book that for you. So it's just I think, to be honest with you, we've always coveted their early childhood center. So we're really excited that we're getting 2 in our district. Board, item 8.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All in favor, please stand up. Thank you.